right now, and we will spotlight you all. And hi, Mo, cooking and moving around, muted. Okay, good deal. Well, once you settle back in, if you've got questions, feel free to put those in the chat room and we'll try to make sure we get to those. But I have a feeling Brian's going to be asking all of the burning questions for us. So I'm going to turn it over to him.
Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Women Adventure Racing live stream, interviewing Ashlie Ferguson and Laura Macready about their adventure from Alaska from British Columbia up to Alaska. It's a great story. I spent this past week digging into who they are and what they've done. Before we start all of that, the Dark Zone, the show that I represent, is delighted and is honored to be here. So thank you to the Women Adventure Racing. Thank you to Stephanie for asking to be involved in bringing this amazing story out to the world. I say amazing, they smile and they say, oh goodness, we have to talk about it. Well, so before we dive into the story themselves, let's spend a minute or two, and Ashlie, we'll start with you. Tell us a bit about yourself. Give us 3 minutes on yourself. I know you're an adventure racer. I know you've had some really nice results. I heard about Wilderness Traverse. I know you were at Worlds. Tell us about your adventure racing background before we get into the story of your adventure.
Okay, wow, deep dive in adventure racing. Unexpected question. Yeah, I got into adventure racing in, I think, 2011. I worked at an outdoor store in Thunder Bay, and the owner of that store ran an adventure race in Manitoba. Randomly came across it through that, signed up with 2 good friends, had an all-ladies team, had no idea about anything, borrowed a mountain bike, showed up. We did our absolute best knowing what we knew. And I think we ended up coming 4th in the women's division. And it was about a 7-hour drive home. And we spent the drive home thinking, wow, we showed up. We knew barely anything. We learned so much. It was a 9-hour race through that race, and just drove home thinking, hey, if we apply everything we learned from this race and we come back, we could do okay. And so just kind of kept coming back to that race, and then eventually from there branched out into some longer expedition length races. And yeah, just really through that discovered my passion for adventure racing.
She doesn't like to talk about herself much.
Yeah, my background.
How good she is.
Exactly. I was going to university for outdoor education at the time, and so I was into the outdoors. But I was into it, but I didn't grow up doing anything outdoorsy or camping, or I just had no foundation. But was discovered it in grade 11 and got really excited. So from there, I ended up working as an outdoor educator on the West Coast, on Vancouver Island. And then from there, worked for the National Outdoor Leadership School starting in 2015. And through that, kind of developed my expedition experience. And then
kind of grow into that. Those 2 things came together, right? Your outdoor experience and NOLS.
Totally. So then NOLS combined with adventure racing is just an amazing combo. I think just the skills of being on an expedition and taking care of each other and all of the things that are key to enduring or just suffering well long-term in a group.
Right, suffering well. That's a good way of saying it.
That's kind of NOLS. And then I think through adventure racing, I just discovered that passion for just doing things that are really hard and how it can actually be really fun. Yeah, and how just the worse it is, for some reason, I just find it the funnier. I don't know. It's so bad. I just can't.
There is a personality profile that enjoys that. There's an expression. Sometimes fun isn't fun, right? But you understand that and you enjoy that. And clearly, your latest adventure, right? This beautiful row that you did alongside, from British Columbia to Alaska. Really, it feels like it's a bit of a culmination for that. But we'll come back to you, Ashlie. We'll come back to you. So thank you. Laura, let's hop over to you now. What is your background like? And I don't want to make any guesses here, but I feel like one of you may have been more dragged into this adventure than the other. Just me saying that out loud here, but you 2 could talk about that.
Well, yeah. So I don't know. I was always a sporty kid, but I was never grew up in England. Obviously, was pretty much in an all boys school, so I played like all the sports with the boys. And I guess I got into triathlon when I was young. Started doing like bigger triathlons, so I knew how to do endurance things, but nothing on the scale of what Ashlie is. So I feel like I married a guide. who basically just taught me everything about how actually small the things that I've done, the things that she's done are so much bigger than what I've ever done. But I've always been sporty, and I've always been in the mountains and wanted to push myself. I've never personally wanted to be on the podium or anything like that, but I love long distance.
Right.
That's definitely my thing for sure. And when I met Ashlie, I was like, wow, this girl knows a lot about everything about the mountains. And I just thought, wow, she's very interesting. And I just thought, wow, it's just like, yeah, I don't know. It was a great match straight away, wasn't it?
Well, clearly the two of you hit it off because you got married, and then for your honeymoon, you took this trip together. Yeah. So clearly, Laura, your early gut spoke the truth, right? The person that you found, and off you went. What were you going to say? Yeah. What were you going to say?
Downplay, like she did Ironman, Super Ironman, and we did our first adventure race together with the Momar in
Momar. Okay.
And we won our division, and I don't even know where we were, but she's very proficient as like an outdoor machine.
I'm really good at following Brian. I'm like, don't give up. Always follow. Like, just chase. Like my little feet. I'm only little.
Yeah, and then there's some big steps. Like Laura became a Canadian and biked across Canada.
Yeah. So, okay, I've done some big things, but like nothing, nothing on the scale of what we just did together, which is I guess.
Which I hadn't either.
Yeah. So I don't want to belabor the point, but I do want to make reference to a podcast called the Dirtbag Diaries, and there's an episode called What is Hardcore and Who's Hardcore, and the two of you are bringing a live part of that now, where you won't never admit to being hardcore, but you know somebody who is, right? So the two, so clearly, and it sounds like all this comes together for the purpose of your trip. The two of you found each other, and the two of you have your various outdoor experiences, and then coming together, getting married, and then all of a sudden it's let's buy 2 boats, let's build the boats, and I know that Stephanie has photos to share. Let's build the boats and let's row the boats. Tell us where this adventure, who was the first person to say to the other person, I got an idea?
I would say Laura would describe me as a big spitballer. Like I'm constantly thinking like, oh, can we do this? Can we do that? What about this? What about, like, I'm always throwing ideas out. Some of them are absolutely terrible. Some of them better than others. And we had been living in Cumberland for a few years. We spent 2 years trying to buy a house. The market was crazy. Everyone knows. And by the time we bought a house, my feet were so itchy. We'd just been working full time, living here. Mm-hmm. We moved into the house, and like maybe a week later, I was like, we got to get out of here. And Laura was thinking, oh my gosh. Yeah. And so I was spitballing different ideas, and I wanted to go. I became a nurse in 2021, I guess, to kind of have a good work-life balance of being able to do adventure racing and adventures, but also have a job. And I thought, let's go to the States, and we can travel nurse there. Travel nurses work 3 days a week. They're very well paid. I thought we can go to Moab, we can bike, we can hike, we can live our best lives. Laura, super hard worker. She's like, I can't work in the States. I'm not just going to be going with you. And so I thought, what can we do? What can I come up with that would be fulfilling for her during 13 weeks in the States? And I came up with like a spoon whittler. I thought she's a carpenter, so I thought she could build a tiny home maybe, and then we could sell it. And she was thinking, like, where am I building this tiny home? Where do I have my tools? Like all these things. And somehow we came across Angus, and like Julie and Colin Angus, who designed these boats. A friend of ours had built one years ago. And somehow through that, I thought maybe you could be building boats, and we could be planning an expedition with these boats. Yeah. And that is how you could have purpose.
Wait. So the boat building expedition was designed to give Laura something to do.
Yes, it was like a big work project.
Ashlie, that is pro level relationship right there.
Exactly.
Congratulations, I'm proud of you.
And honestly, Brian, it was so funny because like Ashlie wanted a tarp tent, like in America.
It was one idea,
and it's like, I don't know if anybody knows much about epoxy, but it just doesn't dry. Like if you don't have it in a nice dry environment. Anyway, so I was like, this isn't going to work.
So somehow I think I
So
had done
sorry.
a trip sea kayaking in the Baja, and I thought we could row the Baja, and Laura's like, it's so far, driving, all these things.
We have
and then
two dogs
somehow
too.
one day,
Hmm.
I was like, what about, I think I read a book called Inside by Susan Conrad, and she paddles
She's
the
amazing.
Inside Passage. And I think I just said, hey, what about rowing to Alaska? And then Laura just said, yeah, I get into that. And that's how it started.
Yeah, so we didn't go to America in the end, but we stayed home that winter, and I finished my my Red Seal at school, and then came out of school, and then we built the boats over the winter. So we opened the boat
January 1st.
January 1st in tiny little pieces. We sewed them all together, and we made 2 rowboats and managed to leave by May 22nd.
With the plan of leaving May 1st.
Yeah, we were a bit behind.
But that's pretty much on schedule.
Yeah, it's pretty close.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea, and you epitomize a huge part of it, and the folks on the call can appreciate with this, that the barrier to go from I got an idea to let's do it was like a millimeter, right? There wasn't like we should talk about it and think about it, and so it's going to be like, hey, wait a minute, let's go do it, and then off you go, and then all the trips you had, Moab, Baja, it ended up being British Columbia up into Alaska.
As soon as Laura said yes, I think I bought the boat like that day. So my style is like strike when the iron's on. So then we were committed.
Well, you have to strike while the iron's hot, right?
Yeah.
If someone says yes, then you got to start kicking it in. Don't give a chance to reconsider.
Yeah, totally.
So,
and we obviously we just moved into our new home that had a double garage, which had heat in it, which was also a great reason why we should build these boats.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. You had to do it then. At that point, you really had no choice. You really had to do it now. Right?
Exactly.
Clearly, that was your that was going on there. So now you clearly the leap from we need to find something for Laura to do. Laura, why don't you build these boats? And now let's take the boats. The for many adventure racers, and folks on the call can identify with this, that the leap from idea into action is relatively short, right? We talked about it a second ago. But what kind of experience did the two of you have about this? Like, had you done this kind of rowing before? Had you done a long distance trip like this before? What was your learning curve like to get from idea into action?
We both laugh at each other because we had 0 rowing experience, but we are very keen. And basically, Ashlie has a lot of experience on the ocean with kayaking as a kayak guide through Knowles, and has kayak guided everywhere, right?
I had some experience.
Right.
I'd worked as a Knowles instructor as a second for sea kayaking on a handful of trips. So I had an idea of the foundation, but I'd never been the person who was the ultimate decision maker in terms of, was it good or not good kind of thing. Yeah.
But right. zero rowing experience except for on a rowing machine in the gym. So we were definite. But I don't know about you, but when I'm in a kayak, I just don't feel comfortable. My back is uncomfortable. My legs feel like they need to do something. And I said to Ash, I was like, can we do it in something that is a full body workout? And we were like, we saw this Colin Angus, and I mean, like Julie Angus, they have this incredible, I don't know, they're just brilliant people, but you can just buy these kits and build them. And we saw those, and I was just like, let's build rowboats. That seems like a way better idea. I mean, yes, we're backwards. And that was difficult at some point for Ashlie, for sure. She had a few crashes into a few things, but it was honestly the best workout. Every day we were like, I don't think that we, changed our physique at all, except for our backs got huge.
And the boats were like these boats they had twice the capacity of a kayak.
Yeah, we could take lots more things.
You could stand up in them.
And were they steadier too? How were they steady wise?
Very steady.
Really amazing.
As somewhat inexperienced ocean people, I feel like that was a huge advantage for us. And we had also, a friend had recommended the book, The Sun is Also a Compass, which is about a couple that builds these same boats and rows from Seattle to Alaska. So having read that book, I knew it was possible. Whether we could do it or not, I didn't know.
Yeah.
But I just knew it had been done in these boats. So.
Yeah. And they were so sturdy. And I honestly had no experience at all on the ocean. And within like a month, I feel like I just felt safe. I was, and any kind of wave that we came across or anything, I just felt like it could take it. I mean, obviously we got better at rowing as well as we got on when we went on. But
So the question I have about that is, and someone had, when I was talking to a friend of mine about your adventure, at any point in your adventure, did you dump? Did you go over?
We didn't.
No.
Yeah.
I took one big wave into the cockpit, but we also had like bilge pump set up, like an electronic bilge pump, so we could just click a switch and then it would start pumping it out. All run by the solar panels that Ashlie installed. I know nothing about electronics at all, and Ashlie did such a good job to put all of the solar panels, which like charged all of our phones and the bilge pump and what else? Like, I mean, they would
our InReach device, like any of our safety things.
So here you are now. You have the idea, you have the boat, you have the willingness to go do it. You said that you had never really rowed like this before. How much training did you do in advance of this? Or do you say to yourself, we're just going to get fit while we're out there?
My method was, we'll just get fit while we're out there. Laura's method was, we need to train. And honestly, we just didn't have, I'd say we didn't have time to train, but basically I was working close to full time. Laura ended up not going back to work because she didn't have time to go back to work.
Without building the boat.
We would never finish the boats in time. In the end, I stopped working so that we could just finish the boats. Like, just actually building the boat took until May 21st. And so we kept thinking, okay, once the boats are done, we'll be able to focus on the crew.
You're going to go, right? That was that's when you're going to have, the boats are done and off we go.
Yeah.
So Brian, Ashlie took hers out on the water once. Before the trip, I took mine out a few times to make sure that it wouldn't take on water. And Ashlie was like, I'm good to go, just one time. And I was like, okay.
Well, basically I thought, you know what, we're going to do a lot of rowing. And if we just start slow, have little days and build up, it was like packing our food, route planning, actually learning enough about the ocean to not die just seems like more important than the physical element. I was like, let's stick to there. But once we launched, I was like, we have until forever to finish this trip. We didn't have a strong, like, we have to finish on this day.
So you had no weather concerns. You weren't going into winter, right? It was a good time of year. Like, you had a lot of sunlight.
In theory, the conditions were just going to get better. I wanted to start in June, thinking it would be better conditions. Laura would have left in probably February, but
I was ready to get going, but I realized how long the boats actually took us to build, and then that was just like, that got kiboshed pretty quick.
And I think it worked out. Like, we did just start with some smaller days. I think our first big day just absolutely spanked us. And then we did just kind of develop up, and by the end we're able to row for 10 hours comfortably.
And you just built into it over time.
We just built into it.
Tell me about the logistics of it. There's a picture I'm going to ask Stephanie to bring up there that just shows food and bags everywhere. How hard was it to do that? And did you pack your fears? Did you get it right? Did you not get it right? Like, when you talk about this, and I know the audience will appreciate hearing this, because here's what's happening. You're doing your thing right now. You're so excited. You love it. People right now at home are kind of like, oh, what can I do like this? Right. So people are taking notes. Tell us about your preparation. Not really your training preparation, which you mentioned there, and for viewer Mo, I hope we answered your question about exercise. Tell me about your logistical prep, the bags of food, freeze-dried food, things like that. Like, how much did you bring with you versus how much you were going to get out there?
Yeah, we packed 9 weeks worth of food, but when we left, we didn't actually know how long the trip was going to take. We thought between 60 and 100 days.
So we were like,
because we basically had read people's accounts of kayaking the trip. Through people owning these boats, they said that they were faster than kayaks, but since we hadn't really spent much time rowing them, we just didn't know how much faster. We didn't know how fast we would go. So we kind of had this range-ish, and then Laura dehydrated a ton of food.
Yeah, I was the cooking queen for about 3 months before we left, and we had 2 dehydrators going. And I just started dehydrating food, which we'll never eat again because we don't want to ever see it again.
Yeah, you're done with it, right? Like no more. Like don't do it to us again.
Risotto again for the rest of my life. I will just never ever eat a risotto, even if it's in a really good restaurant. But because
big learning, maybe more diversity as
well. But
that happens though.
Yeah, totally. And then we packed 9 with what we called our food babies. So they were like a week's worth of food with our snacks and our dinners and everything. And a great friend, actually our nurse practitioner has a husband who's a doctor who was in Bella Bella and offered to take us a massive tote full of our 3 weeks worth of our food. Yeah. So he went out and took 3 weeks worth of our food. So we only had to carry the rest of it.
Gotcha. And clearly one thing that came across here is this was a journey. This wasn't like an FKT or the speed attempt. So who cares? People could carry your food. They could meet you. There was a family you stayed with. I think you were in their driveway and then they met you.
Yeah.
In the trip, right? Shout them out because they sound like they're a wonderful family. Who was that?
Oh yeah, Jay and Malou.
This is their bedroom
right now. We're in their bedroom
now. They thought that they got rid of us, and they were like, "Oh, we're back! Hi."
You come back. The locks have you changed? They went into the door, hiding behind the couch.
They were so incredible. They started by hosting us in their driveway, and we were building our boats, finishing them in their yard. And next thing you know, we're in their living room. Then we're dehydrating in the kitchen just a little bit. And next thing you know, that picture is just in their living room.
Yeah, that's their living room.
Yeah, we've just absolutely taken over the house by the end. By the time we left, we thought, oh my God.
Yeah, that's the front.
That's their house.
That picture. That's so funny.
So they were so incredibly supportive.
Supportive. And came and saw us up in Telegraph Cove and brought a ton of our stuff up there, fed us the most delicious food. And just they're our besties. They're like they're our Canadian family, so we're so lucky to have them.
And we got there basically. It took us about 2 weeks to get to Telegraph Cove, and that was a serious shakedown for us. Where it rained every day. We went through so many tight pinch points of rapids, and the first one we got to, we were barely sleeping because we just were so
scared about the next day. We didn't know
our ability to navigate these conditions in these boats. We were just so green.
Yeah.
And well, let me ask you a question now. As you talk about that, as I read about this and I thought about it, was I saw a lot of pictures of open bays and I saw the glaciers in the background and I saw you coming through some pretty tight channels. What was on average, how many different types of water did you come across? You had big bays. Did you have river rapids? Did you where did it get? What was it like in terms of navigation through there? How tight did it get? How wide did it get? And were you surprised by that?
Yeah, I'd say we had everything, and we had everything every day.
Every day. We're there wasn't one day where we went, nothing happened on the ocean. Mother Nature really showed us her beauty, and but there was some really tight channels that we went through where things turned into white water. But we made sure that we went through at slack tide where the water was the calmest. But there was times where some boats would just be picked up and turned around into whirlpools. And we did a lot of planning the day before.
There was so much. I was going to say, if we wrote a book about it, I would call it The Ocean is a River, because you think, oh, the ocean.
Okay, first off, there's the title for the book. Remember that, because you're going to write a book about it. Okay, I'm writing that down.
Yeah, but so much, but they're so, currents were such a massive factor on this trip, because you're going through so many tight passages where the amount of water that moves in a tight
getting pulled out, right, with the tides and all of that, right? So the water's always moving.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things where you'd be on a beach and you'd want to, maybe it was a super long beach and you would want to leave at high tide, so you didn't have to carry the boats forever. But if you left at high tide, you'd be at the pinch point at the worst time of day.
Yeah.
So you would have to
time it,
get up and carry your boats forever so that you can time the pinch point. Yeah. At the beginning of the trip, there was 4 pinch points in a day. So you're trying to navigate how do we get up? How do we get to all these points at the best time?
Mm-hmm. And there was so many moments where we got to there at the wrong time, and we learned pretty quick that
or had to wait.
We had to wait, or it was.
Yeah, you couldn't just set, okay, we're going to get up at this time every day. We're going to row for this many hours. Mm-hmm. We're going to get off the water. It was so condition dependent.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
and that's an extra mental load for you, right? I mean, it's one thing to get on, like we've all done big trips, right? You do a big gravel ride, for example. You get on your bike and you pedal your bike for 10 hours, and after 10 hours you stop and you camp. It sounds like you had to do a lot of mental work in terms of the tides and the pinch points and the water and the weather. Did you find that especially taxing?
Yeah. Ashley would wake up in like hot sweat in the middle of the night because she was basically she was the leader, you know. For me, I could just do as much as I could learning off her and then watching the ocean. But like for Ashley, it was basically she was the one that was making the big decisions, and she was such a phenomenal expedition leader. She made so many good choices, and there were so many times where she was like, this isn't a good time to be on here. And I'd be like, are you sure? And then sure.
Something came in, whether it came in or the waves got higher.
And I was just like, okay, good call. Like she was brilliant.
Yeah, I'd say at the start of the trip, that burden felt really heavy, just because we hadn't actually had that much time to look at the route and prep because of all of the other things. And I was the most experienced person, but really I was debating whether I had enough experience for us to be successful or for us to like die. Like the night before the trip, I just thought, oh my gosh, like is this when people do something that is beyond like
are you the article or the Outside Magazine article, right?
Exactly.
Newly married couple start off and all of a sudden you become a cautionary tale.
Exactly. I was like, are we the cautionary tale or is this incredible? And I think for me personally, something I think adventure racing has just helped me to build my confidence. But I think for me, I always think, oh, I need more experience, I need more training, I always think, oh, I should get more before embarking. And to be the person with the most experience on this trip was just such a reach, but also amazing.
And she was so good at it. So good at it.
So I'd say at the beginning that burden felt really heavy because Laura, I couldn't bounce off her to be like, what do you think? She's like, I have no idea.
I was like, I don't know. I'm in the boat next to you. I built the boat. You're in charge now.
I trust you. And I was just like, oh my God.
I wanted to go to Baja. I wanted to go to Moab.
However, by the end of the trip, it was incredible to see how my load went down. Like it never goes away entirely when you're on the ocean. Like it's just a constant, you have to constantly be thinking about Mother Nature and what she's got coming for you. But
the weight of all that.
The weight of it got by the end was really, really shared. And at the beginning, it was really in my seat. And
that's an adventure, right? You kind of catch up to each other. You don't really pass, but you kind of get close. So Laura, let me ask you, when you look back on the trip and you look back on the adventure and you look at your own growth during it, where did you find the greatest amount of growth for yourself? Where did you really say yourself, I was okay at this and now I'm much better at it?
Well, okay. I would say the biggest amount of growth, obviously Ashlie taught me a lot about how to read the ocean, and all of the things about the ocean she taught me, which were like, I didn't know anything, knew nothing. Like I didn't know what the moon cycles did to the ocean. I didn't know like what the wind would do to I don't know, like a tide coming in at one way, or like how that would affect anything. But I think together, I don't know if you have this with your partners, if you have partners or whatever, but I realized that when you're with the person that you love and you look over to them and you realize that you're exhausted and you've been rowing for like 10 hours already and it's starting to get nasty out there, and you're just like, you look over at the person that you love and they just calm you in a way or something. And you know how like you sometimes go, okay, I'm being a big baby right now. Why am I being so tired? Like, why am I like acting this way? I think I did a massive, like, I don't know, like something changed in me, and I just looked around, I looked at the beauty, and I looked at Ashlie, and I just thought how lucky we were to be out on the ocean and experiencing this incredible trip that I can't explain to anybody because it was so life-changing for me. And I get a little bit choked up about it because it's like just a dream now. But I think I grew in so many ways. I grew in everything that Ashlie taught me on the ocean. Like we saw the beauty in everything, didn't we? We grew together, and we just got married as well. And I was just like, hopefully we don't get divorced when we get home.
It's a pretty big relationship test.
Yeah, it was huge. It was very emotional, honestly. Like it was probably the most emotional thing that I've ever done. And every day I learned so much. Every day I was like, oh my God, wow. Like now I can navigate the ocean. I can understand weather patterns. I can like now.
Isn't that a great feeling? Isn't it really cool to have that, to be like, I either didn't know this or I had a very light understanding of it. And now I've built that skill set and I can do this. And that's and it's not just adventure racing for the rest of the world, but it's very adventure racing where like I was okay at this and now I have proficiency. And the fact that you could gain proficiency, the fact you could be a partner and all these things is just so good for who you are as a person. Like I'm of worth, right? And I could do more than I thought I could do. And here you are now talking about it. Yeah, it's an amazing feeling. Yeah. I wish more people could have that feeling. Not enough people have that feeling.
I was terrified at the beginning, but now I feel way more confident and and
I think like Laura did I think the whole trip we just kept talking about how much we learned and grew every day. We're like, oh my gosh, like we learned this, we learned that. Like that was such a huge takeaway from this trip, is just that we grew so much
together.
Like we expanded so much. And I think Laura did such a good job from the beginning. She was like, I don't know anything. And I think a week into the trip I was like, you're doing so good for not really having much ocean experience. And Laura said, oh, this is first trip, my best ocean experience. Even just reminded them, like, oh, right, you know. So she did such a good job. She's such a keen learner. Like, what's happening, you know, really quick. She's like, what's happening with the tides? What's happening with the currents? Like, she was so invested in, you know, knowing for her own safety, for her own, like, some people would just be like, oh, you know what's going on. You know, they would just follow someone and trust them the whole time. Whereas Laura was like, I trust you, but also
I need to learn this now.
I'm going to trust but verify. Like, say a bit more about this. Like, I hear you. We're supposed to cross this river, this channel. I get it, but make me feel better about this.
I really trust you, but I can also see that you aren't that experienced. Like I didn't show up as like, I'm an expert. I was like, I think I know enough. I'm going to teach you what I know, but I'm not an expert. And so I think that motivated her to develop her expertise. And by the end of the trip, it was so shared in our risk management and decision making, and like the dialogues we were having about what we were seeing was like we became equals in our skill set by the end of the trip, I would say.
So where did it get sketchy? Where did the food run low? Where did you run out of fresh water? When did the whales brush up against you? Like trust me, this is an exciting trip, and it's like yes, I'm in. I'll buy shares of AshleyandLaura.com. Like, let's go get them. But like clearly, when you look back on it, it was not an upward trajectory the entire time. It got crummy out there. When did it get crummy?
I would say we never ran out of food. In fact, we still have like 2 food in our van right now.
Yeah, that means, by the way, that means that you're adventure racers, because I bring home half the food that I take overseas.
If you want dehydrated risotto, we'll mail it to you.
Hey, thank you. I'm good. Hey, I really appreciate that, my friend, but I'm okay.
The food, we packed so much because we didn't know where, like we didn't have much time to do.
But that was really hairy.
We didn't know where we'd resupply, and so we just had more than we needed. So
that was
I can think of so many other trips where running out of food was really hairy, or you get into hairy situations because you don't have food, and you think,
but
okay, we have to go.
But we didn't have any problem with food or water.
Well, we did with the water on the island at the end. Like basically, food was never an issue. We thought, you know what, the weather's absolutely terrible. We can stay here for 6 weeks. Like
you just ride it out, right?
You have to pick islands so there weren't grizzly bears too. Like obviously bears can swim, but we made sure that at the very end when we were up in Alaska, everyone's like brown bears, brown bears. Which brown bears are bigger than grizzly bears. I don't know if you know that, but they are. Yeah. So we were like on the island a lot. And that's when we didn't have as much water, but like...
Yeah, it's kind of like the salmon are running. So the bears are really concentrated on the big rivers in Alaska where the salmon are. So we just tried to avoid that.
Yeah, gotcha. Because they weren't worried about you. They were a bit more inland. Okay.
And we were just storing our food in our boats, which I think was slightly risque in some ways. But we had so much, that's what you could do. But a brown bear could literally just rip it open. Yeah. So we thought, okay, we'll strategize avoiding them as much as possible. However, just at the very end of the trip in Lynn Canal, which is notorious for being incredibly windy, it's a super narrow canal. In the end, on the route to Skagway, there's virtually nowhere to get off.
Nowhere. It's like cliffs out, like
Yeah.
massive cliffs on either side.
Gotcha.
And
Yeah, so you're in it. So you got to get through to get. You're going through. There's no pulling over.
Yeah, there's a lot of places you just can't get out.
It's like once you start going, it's like you need to make, like from Haines to Skagway, you need to do it in one move. There's no alternative. So for that, you had to choose a good window. But we entered the Lynn Canal south of Haines and had the best conditions, calm, clear. Like we were just out in the middle. We were checking out lighthouses. Like it was so glass. We were saying, I can't believe more people don't come to the Lynn Canal. Every sailor we met before was like, oh, we don't go there. It's too sketchy. We had amazing conditions, and then we camped on this tiny island, and we thought, oh, tomorrow we'll be in Haines. We're 2 days away from the finish, and then overnight it kicked up this massive windstorm.
Wax your surfboard.
Like
let's get the surfboards out. It was
it
was like crazy, and we're like, guess we're staying here for a while.
And we had filled up our water before going there, thinking, oh, we'll have water, but then we ended up being stuck on this island for enough time that we started to think, okay, eventually our issue was going to be water.
Yeah,
right. We'll start rationing a little bit.
But that was the one time that we thought eventually we're going to have to
make a move just to get water
across, just to get water. And
gotcha. Go to the mainland, get the water, and bring it back out.
Yeah, and I'd say the sketchiest moments was mostly just wind. Like so often you'd head out and the conditions would be good.
And they changed like that.
The wind would pick up so fast.
Or the fog. Fog would come in on a massive crossing. Like we did a 2-hour crossing once. And we started off in Bluebird, flat as a pancake, little icebergs around us. It was awesome. And then we started rowing. We're like, oh, let's make the move early because we don't know whether or not the wind's going to get bad or whatever. But we also had done a lot of research, and there's a windy app that you can download for 10 days. But if you're out of signal, you only have like a 10-day forecast, and
it's kind
sometimes
of a guess.
The fourth day it's not very accurate. So that was one of those days, and we started rowing for 2 hours on this big crossing, and then all of this fog came in, and we couldn't see 50 meters in any direction, and then the wind. And then Mother Nature was just like, oh, well, we're going to give you a little challenge today. And we were like, okay, great. So we were like, and there was massive waves coming in. And we were just trying to like, it was like, I don't know if you ski, but you know, when the fog comes in, you're skiing and you don't know where you are.
You have no, you lose all sense of perspective, right? And obviously you have a compass, right? But you don't really know. And you know how far you've traveled, what you're near.
Exactly.
It's very disorienting.
So those were some of my moments. And there's also like cruise ships that come through there sometimes. And sometimes you just go, oh, okay, well, with these tiny little dots. But like, let's just hope. Let's just hope that they're not around here. And then we would get into some foggy areas, and then we would hear blowholes from whales.
Right. But
we couldn't see the whales because we were just in deep fog. And that was also sometimes we were like, the whales were amazing. But also sometimes
they're huge. So how did you do your navigation, right? Map and compass, GPS, paper maps. Did you rely on your electronics? Like how complex did you find the navigation? Or was it just keep going that way and keep the land on your right? Like how did you do it?
We mostly we had paper maps, but we mostly used Navionics, which is basically this app for the ocean that encompasses all the charts of the area, but then also has the tides and
the current.
Makes it like
tides and arrows on which way the water is flowing at a certain time, how fast it is moving.
That's obviously helpful to know which way the water's going, right? Because you're getting pulled in the direction.
That was incredible.
That was
as a resource.
That was basically our main one, really. We barely brought out the charts to look at them. We just carried them just in case our electronics went sideways.
What did you have in terms of like if you had a true emergency? Did you have a Garmin InReach with you? Could you hit the button and it'd come and get you?
We had an InReach. We brought 4 phones, I think. So if we dropped one or lost one, we would at least have a backup phone. We both had a solar setup on our boat.
And the boat's probably done in season either boat, right? If you lost a boat, you had stuff in the other boat.
We'd go to and then we even brought like one for the beach if we lost
another solar panel. Just
it opens up.
I mean, we went over and above with what we thought for the trip, I think.
We had thought, I thought we would do more paper charting because I thought, oh, this is such great practice for adventure racing to always be following along. To have a chart for every single, it is so many charts and they're massive. And you go through several charts a day, like just actually storing them and getting them out and using them was
because they aren't built for handheld use on small boats. They're sitting in big boats. Right, they're sitting in motors, right? So they're not designed for us. They're designed for people with proper engines.
Yes, and I had thought I had bought a set that was pretty complete, and I think 2 days before we left, we started actually having time to go to the charts to see, and then realized that there were some serious gaps.
I was like, let's not rely on those.
Right now, all the navigators, by the way, are getting hives. Because you're talking about how 2 days to go we look and there's not enough. I could feel the rash.
Yeah, exactly. And we hadn't actually used Navionics. Like we just kept thinking, okay, we're gonna spend time learning the app and we're gonna know. And then it was like the night before, Laura's like, I'm just like 2 a.m. I'm like, I don't know how to use it.
We'll be fine. We'll be fine. We're good.
Yeah,
we have all this food.
She's like, you've got this. I was like,
but the thing is, I didn't know what she didn't know, and I didn't know what I didn't know, and then we learned how.
Whereas I knew what I didn't know.
We call it the confidence of ignorance.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, that's it.
She was like, I was like, we might not.
And actually, you're walking around like, I'm good, I got this. Meanwhile, you're in the bathroom throwing up, and Laura's like, oh, we're good to go.
Exactly.
She has this amazing poker face every time that stuff got really hairy on the ocean. I would look over and I'd be like, look at her. She's like, just look calm. And I was like, you okay? Like, are we okay? Are we going to die? And she's like, just slow the row down. Just keep your boat straight.
Inside she's screaming. Right.
Yeah. And then we would get onto the beach later. She's like, that was pretty hairy today, hey? And I was like, yeah, that was really hairy.
You're telling me now? So let me ask you a boat question. So rowing, so the seat slid, right? What about steering? Do you have foot pedals?
No,
steer the boat, or just use your arms?
Yeah, just steering with the oars. Yeah.
There's no keel or no rudder. It was just, but honestly, the oars are so long that.
How early in the trip was this photo, by the way?
That was near the end.
Yeah, pretty close to the end.
Yeah, that was coming close to the end. This is where we were very, very emotional.
Because you look tough there. You look like you've been through it.
PFD off.
Yeah. Look at the PFD on the deck. Safety seconds.
Yeah,
obviously.
We always have them super accessible because it would pick up, and the first thing we know when someone was getting nervous is
the PFDs went straight on. Yeah,
PFD's on.
We like give each other side eye. As soon as the PFDs went on,
we like signal, like, okay, we're ramping up a little bit.
Yeah, we're ramping up. It's pretty scary. Yeah.
What did you do in terms of with going in the water and the PFDs? Clearly, this is Canada. This is Alaska. You go in the water. You dump the boat. And you're in the water. How much time are you going to get in that water before it starts getting serious in terms of hypothermia? How quick do you have to get out?
Yeah, I think you need to get out quick.
Yeah,
that looks cold. That picture, that looks like I'm cold looking at that photo right now.
It was, and just the wind that comes off the glaciers as well is really cold. So I don't think that you would last very long, but we didn't ever put ourselves in high ocean swell, windy, nasty areas. When that photo there was so calm. That was but it would have been really, really cold.
Yeah.
Right.
We were in that.
Yeah, I think when we left on the trip, our thought was just conservative decision making.
You had time, right? You had time, you had food. There's no rush. You're not in a race.
We barely know what we're doing. We'll just make conservative decisions. If it looks sketchy, we get off. We don't launch. We didn't have an end time that we had to arrive at, and that was such a that's what made our trip safer. Is that we were able to just stop rowing when it felt hectic.
And how many times have you read about trips that have accidents and disasters because the trip leader was under an artificial time constraint? We have to get there. And as a result, but for you, you're kind of like, listen, the weather doesn't look good. We're going to spend an extra day on this island. We might run out of water. That's cool. We'll go get more water. And so clearly the big lesson there is not having that pressure of finish time on you made your safety protocol so much easier.
Yeah, even knowing that and realizing that is such a huge thing, we had to constantly remind ourselves not to fall into the trap. So I think we'd be like, hey, wait, this isn't as soon as, especially when you're getting close to a community, we
Yeah,
say
we
like,
like-
oh, we're going to get to Juneau today, or we're going to get to this place,
Like,
or we
oh,
start
there's
getting
further
so.
there. Yeah, here's a car, that'll
And
be
then
nice.
that's when
Yeah.
the weather picked up, and we would start thinking, we could
make
still
it.
make it,
Yeah.
Whereas if
Right.
if a community was 5 days away, we would just get off.
Yeah.
Right.
So even if we knew that was a thing, it was still easy to kind of fall into the trap.
Mm-hmm. And we did get ourselves in a bit of, like, we were trying to get to Bella Bella, and we were like, let's push, and we were on the water for almost 11 hours that day.
Yeah,
And
Mike,
we were-
what was was 11 hours your longest day? How long did you go?
Yeah, 11 hours was it. And it was just, yeah, some days, most days, we were on the water for about 8,
Okay.
around 8. And then we would always plan where we could get off. But then some places we would get to, we would realize that most of it was underwater because of high tides or something. And then we would push on for another like 2.5 hours. So we would always put like another, like sometimes it'd be like 10 hours. And that was like, we were like, let's not be in a sufferfest right now. We're not in an adventure race.
Right, and that wasn't the goal, right? I mean, you weren't doing a speed record, so you had all the time in the world. Okay. How did your hands hold up?
They've still got a few blisters actually. I'm hardened. My hands are pretty hardened.
The hands, like we wore neoprene gloves, which was really, really helpful. But honestly, the hardest thing at the beginning was our butt.
Oh my God.
Like whoever designed like a carbon fiber seat to sit on for 6 to 10 hours.
Yeah. They were very
crazy.
Yeah.
Like, it was the worst.
So my next Dark Zone episode coming out probably early next week before Nationals is Glenn Sadler, who's an ocean rower. And he talked about how just the wear and tear from his stomach down to his upper thighs, just sitting, the repetitive strain of just being in that position the entire time. How did your hands, you had your butt, how did your back hold up from like being crunched over? Like, were your hip flexors okay? Did you have to stretch? Did you get all like how did you, like, in terms of self-care physically, what did you have to do during the trip to keep yourself in one piece from a physical perspective?
Well,
we tried to sleep.
I
did a lot of sleep.
There was some time I think I put myself to bed at 4:30 in the afternoon once. And Ashley's an avid reader, so she would stay up reading until like 10 o'clock, and then we'd be honestly we set out
10 o'clock. She means like 6:45.
Right. But like mainly I would sleep a lot, but like I was exhausted, and like I can sleep anywhere. You could put me on a gravel bar and with a massive rock sticking up in my back, I would fall asleep there.
Yeah, it's a very adventure racer. Yep.
Yeah.
No,
very good adventure racing.
Anywhere. But Ashley would, so she would stay up quite a lot, and I think that you definitely. So we would set the alarm for 2:30 in the morning, and I would have to like really get her awake. Like I'd have to poke her like with a coffee. Like I would make her coffee, and then she would like stir like an angry bear sometimes. Not even an angry bear, but like she'd be like, this is like not angry at all. Actually, she's pretty good, but we were getting up really early in the morning, and we were going to bed really early. Like I don't think I saw. I don't know.
We saw very few sunsets.
Yeah, it was bedtime. So let me ask you that question. And this is like adventure racing with expedition, like calories. Could you not get enough in you? Like with the 8 hours of rowing a day, did you just become calorie consumption machines like you see in an adventure race?
We had lots of food, so we ate really well, and we definitely ramped up how much we ate as the trip went by. It was just like finding, like in adventure racing, finding the foods that you actually want to eat.
Like eventually you get sick of food, right?
You're like, you have your snack bag, and you're like, I don't want to eat anything in the snack bag, but you knew you had to eat something. So as the trip went on, we just really loved getting to a town and buying fresh stuff, like buying cabbages, eating vegetables, adding all those fresh things that we could.
Yeah. But I was like, if I could have just eaten jerky for the whole time, I would have done. Yeah. Like I'm not a sweet tooth person, and we packed a lot of sweet stuff, and Ashlie loves sweet stuff. So our snacks on the day were just a lot of sweet things, and I was done with it. I could have just eaten salt by the end of it. So we were definitely, I think we would change that if we were going to do it again.
And I think the other, like we moisturize our hands, we moisturize our feet. I think we had some non-freezing cold feet things at the beginning of the trip that by Bella had resolved, but we talked a lot about stretching and how we really needed to do it, but we did not stretch very much.
Yeah. Oh, by the end of the day, you just want to go to bed. How long did it take you once you went ashore to getting to sleep? How long did it take you to get the boats on? How long did it take you to break everything down, get everything out, build your camp, like, and then break it? Like, how efficient did you get there?
Yeah, like maybe like just under 2 hours, I think was our fastest from waking up to getting in the boat.
To moving off the
but we basically scheduled an hour for coffee. So
it's like easy does it. Like, we're not going to rush into the day, guys. Like,
spend the first hour in the tent just drinking coffee. We take the top off the tent, watch the sunrise, and
we did a lot of like looking at our map at that point where we were fresh, and then we were like, okay, these are the places that we could get off.
Right.
So we had like a group chat, didn't we?
We had
to drink our coffee very slowly.
Yeah. And then we do that for an hour, and then we spend the next hour taking everything down, carrying the boats, loading up and launching.
But yeah, sometimes when we actually got to the beach, if it was low tide, the beach was huge, and it would take, and those boats are not light. So we would have to take all of our food babies to the very top of the beach, all of our stuff, then carry the boat, and then even just try and think about food. So me and Ashlie kind of took it in turns. One person did the kitchen one night, so like Ashlie would cook, and then the other person would go put the tent up and put the tarp up, and then do the other job. So we kind of got into a system where one of us would do one thing, and we just like divide and conquer, didn't we?
You became a unit that kind of worked back and forth. It's been noted that you're wearing a bug head thing right there. How were the mosquitoes?
There was nothing except for in the morning.
Yeah.
It was like,
wow, you got lucky.
That's it. There were so few bugs.
Yeah,
we kept saying what's happening with the BUG.
Yeah, we didn't want to say bug just in case they turned up, but nothing. We didn't see any bugs.
Someone's gonna watch this and get the idea to go do the trip, and they're gonna get terrible bugs, terrible weather. They're gonna get big waves. Thanks, Ashley. Thanks, Laura.
Honestly, bring a bug head net.
Definitely.
Because when they were out, you absolutely wanted them.
And you have to bring it just if you don't bring it, you're doomed. You can carry it, never use it.
Out of 95 days, I'd say maybe there was 5 or 6 days that we thought, they're just not really on the coast, which we did not realize.
Yeah, I feel like it was just so much colder there. We almost felt like we were in winter. Well, not winter, but like we were in fall. We felt like there was like, it was raining a lot at the beginning, and then when we got to Alaska, the sun came out, and we were like, okay, here's the summer, cool. But that was like
short list.
Like we were like,
cool on the coast.
It's so cool how the weather is so different. You're sweating 1 second, and then you're putting every single layer that you have on. And there was just like not one.
How hard was that on the boat? How hard was it to manage the clothes change and all that? Like did you keep the stuff at your feet? Did you pull it on? Did you just say like your lower body was just, you were wearing that for the day?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think like going back to what you said before in terms of our safety gear on the boat is that we had planned to wear basically a dry suit for the trip because that's the safest thing you can wear. That's what sea kayakers recommend. If you immerse in the water, it's so cold. But it was just so unsustainable to actually wear dry gear and row a boat.
I couldn't imagine doing that. I couldn't imagine that.
It was so hot. And so we were like, well, how
you'd be venting it, and then eventually you'd unzip it, which would defeat the entire purpose of it.
So Laura had bibs, I had paddling pants and a jacket, but we barely wore the jackets because you couldn't, unless it was pouring rain or we really were like, hey, this is sketchy, jackets on.
Yeah.
But the rest of the time, sometimes I had to pull my paddle, like my pants down to just be in shorts. Because
there's also a picture out there of you just wearing a PFD, by the way, and just a PFD. That picture exists also.
Yeah, there was pictures out there of us wearing way less as well.
Yeah, so it was tricky. Like it was really easy in these boats. You could stand up. They were really stable, so you could change layers and move. But as you know, in adventure racing too, you constantly like trying to find that balance of not changing your clothes all the time and figuring out what can you wear most of the time and then just changing when we needed to, or else we were constantly, put a jacket on, take a jacket off. So,
but the bibs I think were the key. I think that they were awesome because you could just take all of your clothes off and just have your bibs on, and then just pull your bibs down to your ankles if you were too hot. But yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Bibs were awesome. I would be a strong supporter of bibs if anyone did a rowing trip.
Yeah.
Okay. When you were rowing, what did you wear in your feet? So we see the big boots in the picture here. What did you have? Did you have trainers on? Like, what did you wear?
Yeah, we had like dry pants that had a dry sock, and then a neoprene sock over top, and then running shoes, basically.
Yeah, running shoes. Yeah.
Just for navigating up and down the beach and carrying the boat. Like you
slippery.
just like a trail runner or something.
Yeah.
I would find out the hardest thing would be the first 10 seconds after getting out of the boat and standing up. Right?
Yeah.
Just letting the blood and everything just sort of settling in.
Just lifting the boats, honestly. We named them after.
What was the total weight on the boats?
They're about 70, 75 pounds.
Empty.
And empty. With everything on them. And so we're just like with the solar panel and the battery or whatever. And so often we get to the beach, land, and then just thinking about, you're so tired from rowing and you think, oh, I can't wait to be done rowing. But then you hit the beach and you think, oh my gosh, like now we have to empty everything, carry it all up. And then we carry everything up, and then we say, oh, the grandmas, we were always talking about the grandmas, and we tried to float them up as much as we possibly could.
Right.
So we didn't have, but it never, anytime we tried to float them, like 2 times it was good. The rest of the time they're just bashing with the waves and getting destroyed and
stuff. Yeah. So we just ended up carrying
them. Just being like, we just have to carry them, but we always have to psych ourselves up, be like, okay, let's get the grandmas. Let's go, and once we moved the boats, we were always, that was like a high five. Yeah.
So your boats had names. Tell us about that. Who are they named after?
My one's after my grandma Jojo, who was a very influential person in my life, and Ashley's is your grandma, G-Ma, which is also a huge part of Ashlie.
I love that. So they're, if I heard you correctly, they're named after your respective grandmothers.
Yeah. And Ashlie, when she built her, she spread her grandma's ashes in her lids. So her lids are clear and you can see her grandma's ashes. It's a bit weird. Yeah. It's a bit bumpy.
A little bit weird. But when I was really spicy, I would just be rubbing the lid like,
be like, Grandma, come on, G-Ma, you got it.
Don't let us down.
I named this after you. Don't do me in.
Guardian angel style. We're like, don't let us down. We've come this far.
Yeah. And they were outstanding. The boats were so brilliant, weren't they? I feel like I'm very emotionally attached to my boat, and so are you, aren't you, Ash? Yeah.
Well, it was a piece of you for this. I mean, it carried you, it conveyed you, it protected you, it kept you going forward. I mean, it's a part of you. I mean, there's the emotional attachment is completely common. I will point out that someone did note that the sitting here, the picture of you sitting on the ice there, was for your rear end. That at the end of a long day, it was time to cool off.
It was such a brilliant day. That was so awesome. I think that was the first day that we saw our first iceberg, and we pulled up to this beach, and we were like, wow, icebergs got delivered. We were like, this is awesome. And then the next morning when we woke up, we actually did an amazing, should I say it? Can I say it? We did a nudie pictures with the iceberg as well, which we didn't feel like we should share, but
by the way, it's after 9 o'clock here in the East Coast. You can share all you want. All the kids are gone to bed. So don't worry about it.
Tasteful nudes on Facebook.
They're for our Christmas cards. Anyway, but then the next morning we woke up and they were all gone. And I said, Ash, aren't you happy that we got to spend that time doing that amazing photo shoot with those incredible icebergs? Anyway, we were always goofing around, and Ashlie wanted to climb that one, which was very it was really funny watching her try and get up on it, actually.
It was so
funny. I can imagine like slipping and breaking your ankle. Yeah, great picture, Ashlie. Yeah, thanks.
I was like, I really want to ride this, but I also don't break my ankle.
Right.
It'd be a really bad time.
So in looking back on the trip, and clearly your energy, your enthusiasm, it still pours out of you to this day, right? And what's nice about doing these post-trip conversations is that the people I'm interviewing get to relive it, right? They're back in it, and all those emotions come back. A very, very common thing that adventure racers have is after a huge expedition race, there's a bit of a down. There's a depression that kind of follows that because you did this amazing thing, and now you're as I always tell, like when I'm done, I'm back. I'm like a schnook. I'm back at my desk, right? And I'm back. So walk me through, how have you managed that, and have you done the usual typical adventure race thing of picking the next event to aim for? Like, where are you in terms of that continuum?
We're deep in the
deep in the sadness. Yeah.
Yeah, you're there. We've all been there.
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, that was just like the most incredible thing that I've ever done, and it's very strange to come back into the world and be around a lot of people, and then realize that reality is a job and all of the things. But Ashlie has jumped into. She's actually on her 9th night shift, and she is exhausted right now. So she's been amazing, but like we are definitely finding it difficult. But
yeah, we basically we tried to think, okay, well, what can we plan next to help us with that transition?
Yeah.
But honestly, it was so big, it was so all-encompassing that we were just like
what can be bigger?
Like really, we were like, we just need to go to work for like 2 years. So it was kind of like, well, what could we plan that is so big? Thinking, well, what is our time? And
I mean, if anybody's got any tips of how you deal with this kind of like blueness, then that would be awesome.
Well, I think the first way you deal with it is acknowledging the fact that it exists. Right, you give it a name, and you don't kid yourself into thinking it's not there. And trust me, people on this call, I've been there, you're there right now, and so I never shy away from saying out loud what's true, right? And so you're acknowledging the fact, use the term blue, the fact that it's kind of blue. It's good for people to hear that, because people, it's such first of all, I love the adventure racing community, and while this was not an adventure race, let's admit it's at the same dinner table, right? It's that kind of experience.
Training for adventure racing.
Right. It's what it was training. I like that strategy. And I agree with you that we all go through that when we're done with something big, there's that nadir, there's that bottom part where you kind of, and what I found is that people, they do two things. They do what you're doing. They tell the story of it, right? Because you get to relive it. And on top of that, too, they use the skill set that they picked up in the previous adventure for the next adventure, right? And they begin to kind of live in that world of what's next for me here, what's going on there. And so I think that's always my advice to adventurers, that when they're home is like, talk about the next thing and feel free to spitball different ideas. So has Moab come back on the table? Is Baja there? Or are the two of you just like, listen, Brian, it was yesterday we were done. We're taking our time.
Well, basically, we kind of, as we were coming to the close of the trip, we started to feel it before the trip even ended.
Yeah, we got pretty sad.
The closer we got to Skagway, we just thought like, oh my God, we're almost there.
And you don't want it to stop, right? You don't want it to end.
No, we were like slowing down.
We sat outside of Skagway, 5 kilometers outside of Skagway, and sat there for ages because we didn't want to keep going to the very end. We were like, we don't want to be, and we had some tears, and we were like, this is epic. And so we definitely, we
definitely got some messages from friends and family saying, hey, are you guys pregnant? Or
you're taking your time. They're thinking you're stranded. Meanwhile, the two of you were like, don't go too fast.
Yeah, we started the trip having shorter days, and we started having these massive days, and then our days kind of started getting shorter again.
We were like, we don't want it to be
over. Our family, knowing us, they were all like, you guys
are dragging you.
Yeah. And because we didn't have to.
You're busted. They're like, hey, wait a minute. You got to get done.
So I feel like we drew it out as much as we could, and then we were fortunate that we had our van left in Whitehorse, and we're meeting up with them. So we drove back down to Vancouver Island in our van, and we had our mountain bikes in there. And so we spent a lot of time just exploring little communities on the way back and biking on trails and meeting up with some friends.
So how did you find, when you were done, how did you find your lower body? Did your legs run out of muscle?
Our cardio was
so bad. Yeah. We went mountain biking, and it felt like someone was standing on my lungs, standing on them. Like we were just so cardio unfit.
Oh my God! It was like they smoked a pack of cigarettes before going. Like I actually had to stop and just breathe on my bike.
It was so weird. It was such a weird.
Well, because you never really touched the higher zones. You were steady all day.
Sometimes you have like little moments of it, but mostly.
But you're not in in your anaerobic zone ever when you're rowing, unless you're actually like really, really scared and you're rowing really hard.
And originally I had been signed up for Expedition Oregon, and about into the trip it became clear to me that I just was not going to make it in time.
That was like last week, by the way, and the trip ended.
In the end, I basically would have finished the trip, and I basically would have had to drive straight to Oregon. And
that would have messed you up.
I was like, 7 weeks before the race, I thought that this was going to work. And they're like, no,
I mean,
you're
great race, by the way. Don't get me wrong, but still, you'd still be out there.
looking forward to. But it would have added so much stress because of just the timeline we didn't want. And also, they were like, oh, you're so strong, it'll be fine. And I thought, absolutely not, it's not going to be fine. And then we went for our first bike ride, and I thought, oh my God, I was actually starting right now.
Right.
Yeah.
You're stopping, you're taking the phone out during the bike ride, and you're calling Jason. Like, it's not going to work out. Like,
yeah. I was like, I need to sit down. Like, so I think, and we also, I think a strategy is just to have something lined up. Like, I think when you just go back to your regular life and then you're just back where you were before you left, it can be really tricky. But we rented our house for a year. Right. So our plan was to finish this trip and then live somewhere else and work somewhere else until eventually coming back. So it's kind of like the trip is still going, but right now we don't really know what our next spot is.
Right.
But
so instead you're sitting in these nice people's living room.
To figure that out.
Well, I have to tell you, this has been so informative, and it's great. And this is adventure fuel for people. You joked before about the idea of writing a book. Is that on the table? Are you thinking about that?
I can see him.
Oh, you froze a little bit. Did we lose you?
Did we lose you?
I think I lost your audio, Brian. I'm not.
No, I'm still here.
I don't know.
Check your audio, because I can hear you.
No.
And I'm still getting audio sounds from here.
We can hear you now.
We're good?
Sorry, yes.
Sorry. No worries. So the question I would ask, and what I will do, and I'll do a little post work editing on this, Stephanie, just so you know, for the audio part of it. You talked about the idea of writing a book before. Is because that's very often not an uncommon post adventure activity is to make an article or something out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, Laura made us dedicated journalers. Yeah, she was like, every single day we have to journal. Was actually a lot. So many days, I was so tired, didn't feel like it, Yeah. But as a result, we actually really did catalog every day and those emotions and the things that happen, which is amazing. But neither of us are really writers, so I'm not sure if we'll produce a book. But
but if you have a chance, you should read The Inside by Susan Conrad.
Yep, I wrote that down. We'll link that in show notes.
An incredible book, and she's wonderful, and she's really lived it, and she did it on her own, which was it was awesome to read that before we left and get inspired.
And you've mentioned that twice. Was that pure inspiration for this? Like, was it a replica of her trip?
It not a replica, but it was really cool to have read that book and then be in some of the places that she talked about in the book and recognize, oh my gosh, this is where she was when she was talking. Like, she had so many fears as well, just being out there by herself,
animals,
and just being like, oh my gosh, this is the beach she was talking about. And it was so, her book isn't day by day every single place she goes to, but when I was in a place that I remembered she had mentioned in the book, it was really cool to be like, oh my gosh, I was at home reading about this, and now here we are.
So she was inspiring for sure.
And just we kept thinking like, oh my God, she did this by herself.
I couldn't even imagine.
Doing it together and being able to bounce off each other, and just, it's incredible how much safer and secure you feel just having one other person there. Yeah. Even if you're not any safer, like if a bear's going to attack you, it's going to get you. But it's amazing how just having someone else there makes you feel calmer. Yeah. And the fact that she didn't have that, like, I don't think I wouldn't have wanted to do the trip by myself.
No, that's a whole different dynamic. That changes the entire structure, right? That changes the partnership. That changes leaning on each other. Like, that makes it really hard.
Yeah. So we were super inspired by her for sure.
Yeah.
So we're over our hour. We're getting near the end here. Can you tell us a bit about your closing thoughts as you process it out during the podcast, during our recording now, and you think about it? What do you want to leave the listener with?
For me, I think anybody can do this. Like, it's definitely like quite a challenge to build the boats and make this happen. But I never ever thought I'd see myself rowing to Alaska with my partner. But if you have a strong background in outdoor ed, marry one of those people because they'll inspire you and make
Did you marry because you love me because I'm an adventurer? It's because I love you, dear.
like marry one of them and they will take you places that you never thought you would ever go. And that's definitely my take. I just never thought that I would ever do this. But I don't know about you, Ash. What would you say?
Yeah, I'd say, marry someone who does good in adverse situations.
Is a yes person.
I think the biggest takeaway for this trip was that like this really was a reach for us in terms of our skill set and our abilities, but it was so amazing to accomplish. Like I think it was rewarding beyond what we could have imagined. Like, we had no idea what was going to happen out there. We barely knew what we were going to see when we left, and just the entire experience was so rewarding. And so I think for me, I've held back on doing so many things because I've just felt like I don't know enough and I need to follow someone else, or I need to just get more training first. And I think for sure you need a foundation, like you set yourself up to be as safe as you possibly can. But I think just remembering that if you just start building towards the goal, it just becomes more and more possible. And I think for us, like we started by just telling ourselves it was possible, even though that was very optimistic, and that made it possible. And we just, we'd get overwhelmed by how far it was or how big it was or everything we still had to do. And then we would just bring it back to like, what do we have to do today? Like, what can we do on the boats? And then we just kept chipping away. And then eventually we were in Skagway, which was mind blowing.
There is a certain mindset that you get into that it actually applies to the outside world too. When you find yourself in the middle of a big challenge, it's not about getting to the end. It's about getting to the next safe place, right? The next shoreline. And there's a life lesson there that you clearly knew already going into it, but that also plays a role there. Just to revisit it, in my numbers here, I have you traveling 750 kilometers, 71 days of rowing, and 95 total days on the trip. Does that sound right? Am I understanding correctly?
1,550 kilometers.
1,550.
1,750.
1,750. Okay, good. 1,750. Yeah. Remember, make sure every kilometer. Correct everybody the entire time.
Every kilometer helps.
Shut up, Gatens. 1,750.
That was 100,000 kilometers.
We earned every one of those kilometers. As Stephanie pointed out to me before, and I want to thank Stephanie for doing the video and taking care of this.
Yeah, thanks, Stephanie.
What's great was that this adventure, that the two of you were greater than the sum of its parts, right? You had never done these things. This was the biggest thing you've ever done. And you did it. You only did it because you did it together. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from this entire adventure. It was together. You were far stronger, and you can go longer, and you can be more connected than if you did it by yourselves.
Yeah. Like find some folks and just sign up for something. And you will surprise yourself. Yeah.
Excellent.
We've never been stronger. Like honestly, we've never been stronger. It was the best honeymoon I've ever had, and hopefully the only one.
Is there another one? Okay, we'll leave it at that. Okay, well, listen, thank you very much. It was delightful, Stephanie. Thank you for inviting me to be here tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Stephanie.
So much. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.